Right. Welcome to the African Liberty webinar. My name is Andrew Munganga. I am the Communications Intern at African Liberty. Of course, we are not with our managing editor, who is Ibrahim Anoba Babatunde. He might join us anytime. Otherwise, thank you so much for everyone that has joined. To our honorable guests, we're very honored to actually have you here. I know we've been talking via email, but the time has now come. We have Dr. Eghosa. We also have Ms. Dube and also Ms. Ivy. So I'm going to be reading through their profiles today. But before I go on, I just want to let you know that today we are going to discuss on the role of the media in Africa's free trade story. Of course, by the way, we have an audience, a larger audience. We have journalists, we have young professionals, we have students. And so this particular topic resonates with everyone. So the role of the media in Africa's free trade story is what we're going to dive into, where we're going to explore how the media can drive Africa's free trade agenda and discover how the media actually influences public perception, policy, and also trade by highlighting the benefits and challenges that the media come. All right. So, okay, with me, I have Dr. Eghosa, who is an associate professor of international environmental law. His main research areas include international environmental law and natural resource governance. He is a chair of the committee on the teaching of international law and sustainable development goals at the International Law Association in Nigeria. Then we also have Ms. Dube. She is an expert in information rights, focusing on freedom of expression, access to information, and data protection with a specialization in the intersection of technology and human rights. Then we also have Ms. Afe. She is a project officer in the Expression, Information, and Digital Rights Unit of the Center of Human Rights at the University of Pretoria. She holds a master's degree in international law from Oxford Brookes University, postgraduate diploma in law from the Kenya School of Law, and so on. Our guests today have got honorable, profiles. I could read everything, but without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, for those that have joined us, of course, we recognize Ibrahim Anoba, our managing editor at African Liberty. Like I said, today's topic is very important. We are going to look at the role of the media in Africa's free trade story. Then I want to begin with Dr. Eghosa. Could you please highlight or give us an overview of the current media landscape in Africa and how has it been covering the African continental free trade area? I think we can start from there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation to be a part of this amazing project you guys are doing. In terms of the media or current media landscape, we need to basically start looking at what exactly do we mean by media landscape? What do we mean by the existing landscape? So one way to think about is maybe looking at from the traditional media sort of sources and the current digitalized media sources we have today. So there have been a couple of reports that have been done by various organizations in different parts of the world. So I just read out something from the recent Afro Barometer's report. They say that Africa's media landscape have shifted in the last 30 years. The end of state-run monopolies in most countries brought us of potential of news, information, and entertainment. So basically, in some parts of Africa, you have traditional media outlets like your national TV. So in the 80s and 90s, many African traditional outlets were basically national-owned TV companies, TV corporations. They were reporting the news on behalf of the state. So in the recent past, things are changing. You now have the increase of digital sectors and even broadcast media. So some of these organizations, some are very small companies, some are very large multinational cooperation. So why am I referring to this Afrobarometer data? It was quite interesting when I saw this information. It said the latest Afrobarometer data from 39 African countries document important changes to how Africans use media to access news and information. So the interesting thing for me was that I thought it was going to be social media. That was the biggest way that Africans actually access information. But they said it was through radio, that radio is where, in many parts of the world, radio is the highest number of persons access their information through your traditional radio system. So if you go to rural areas, poorer parts of Africa, how many of them have access to the internet? How many of them have access to smartphone? But there's always a small transistor radio. There's always a radio that works without the need of electricity. Just you have your battery. So in that report, in that Afrobarometer report, they say that data from 39 African countries document important changes in how Africans use media to access news and information. They argue that radio remains the most accessed medium, although digital use continues to grow. However, despite significant gains in internet and social media access in recent times, you have a lot of inequities in terms of gender, social groups in different parts of the continent. Education as well is a key barrier in terms of access. However, in many parts of Africa, reliance on traditional media is dwindling. So the question is, how many of us have actually watched our national news today? How many of us have read a newspaper, a physical copy of a newspaper? I remember when I was younger, I used to buy loads of newspapers. When I was doing my undergraduate degree in Nigeria, I used to buy like Guardian newspaper to read the reports. Even I live in the UK, I used to buy newspapers a lot. The only time I read newspapers is when I'm on the train, when I get access to free newspapers. So in many parts of the world, that reliance on traditional media is changing. People are not getting information and sources from the national TV anymore. Your phone, your Facebook, your TikTok, your Twitter, your Instagram are the places you even get information in terms of in different parts of the world. So I just move on to what Zephyr Musa has actually said. She wrote something in the African Renewal magazine. It says to remain accessible, conventional media practitioners in Africa are adapting to a new media world that is time sensitive and more interactive. Advocacy journalism in particular is growing exponentially. Bloggers and citizens journalists are mobilizing for various causes, including good governance. Sorry? Yeah. So there are a lot of change in media technology operations over the last 15 years. Society still looks to media to play its traditional role. So what is the traditional role of the media? To inform, to educate, and to entertain. So that is the traditional. So that just provides the context in what we have. So that we have the rise of social media, Facebook, Twitter. We have the continued use of traditional media like on TV and radio is still very, very popular. So, and also most of this, if you look at a typical media station now, they probably have like they will have like a TV station, they will have a website, they will have a Facebook page, they will have a Twitter page. So even newspapers are no longer solely traditional source of information. They always rely on digital sources. You could actually post a Facebook page.
I would ask you to hold your thought, Doc, because I think you've mentioned quite a number of you've given us an overview of the role that, the media so far has played, and also outlined talk of the radio. I know a lot of people are in the rural areas and some of them do not have access to phones, social media, but then the radio there plays quite a critical role. All right, allow me just to go to Miss Ivy. I have one question for you. Now that we've understood, or Doc has given us an overview, how can the media effectively educate? He has given us their roles, they educate, they inform, and all those kind of things. But then maybe you'd want to dive deeper by explaining to us how effective they can educate, how effective can they inform African citizens about the benefits of the African Continental Free Trade Area. Maybe a few people know about this, but then how can the media play its effective role in educating Africans about this? Thank you. Ms. Ivy, yeah.
Thank you very much, Andrew, and thank you very much, Prof, for that insightful introduction that you've just given us. Maybe to explain the role of the media when it comes to education, I may just need to add a little bit about the landscape bit, that to better understand the media in Africa, it has been described that Africa's landscape in terms of media is two-pronged. So we have Anglophone Africa, and then we have Francophone Africa. And so these are very two different for media landscapes that exist. So looking at the Anglophone one, we have powerful media groups. Okay, I'm based in South Africa, but I'm Kenyan. And so we have a media group known as the Nation Media Group. Under it, there are various media houses. So there are TV stations, there are radio stations, newspapers, and all. But then you look at Francophone countries, and here we have media houses, most of them being owned by single owners. So not groups. I mean, very few groups. That means they're also a little bit fragile. And ownership also has a direct correlation also to what then the media or the journalists in the media houses can do. Back again to Anglophone, there is close ties with the business community. It is very profit-oriented. And how it works is that it also separates facts and analysis. But coming to this other side again, Francophone, we have a lot of close ties with the government. So the media has very close ties with the government and leans a lot towards opinion journalism. So not much clear distinction between facts and opinions. So just to lay that basis. About now educating about this agreement, there's someone who once posed a very interesting question. Are Africans interested in Africa? I could pause there. Are Africans interested in Africa? You can't educate people on something that they're not interested in. And according to some media professionals, audiences in Africa, interestingly, do not really have an interest in stories about other African countries unless it affects them. You see, the media will churn out what people want. You need to sell what people will buy. So far, then my input then would be, how can the media then educate these people who are not very interested as well? First, make it relevant. Package it in a way then to show them how this story affects them, so that it doesn't come as an other story. To a Kenyan, let it not come as a Nigerian story. To the Nigerian, let it not come as a Kenyan story. And even if it is that other country's story, how then is it affecting me, my own country? Then there is also need to break down the clauses of the agreement. Not everyone, okay, yeah, that's obvious. Not everyone in Africa is a lawyer or an economist, but we're talking about a trade agreement. So it has a lot of legalese, it has a lot of economic terms. Explain it to people. And using social media right now, as Prof has mentioned, we are now in an age of social media where we have kind of neglected or put the traditional media in the backseat. So use social media to give brief and interesting and engaging sessions. Little tidbits. Our concentration span as well has reduced. So quick fire sessions to give quick facts about this agreement. And I think which something that also we put everywhere right now is leverage on the youth. Use the youth everywhere to reach their peers. I think we've all seen the Gen Z movement in Africa, which started in Kenya, and the effect that can have. So we need to use the youth, equip them to then equip.
Yeah, interesting. Well, one thing triggered my mind when you said Africans interested in African affairs. That's really a question that every one of us should answer. And I was thinking, have we ever had really a story from the media sector that has been circulated around just to share with us about trade issues and all those kind of things. But I have a follow-up question for you. You can keep that thought. I really want to have Ms. Dube also just come in and maybe just get to answer the policy aspect of it, to say what ways can the media influence public policy, or should we say policy making, to create a more inclusive environment for free trade in Africa? The media plays a huge role, but I think we have this specific role that they can play. But then in what way can this, can they actually play this particular duty? Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you to the organizers for including me in this conversation. Yes, the media is the fourth estate, as it has been indicated. They have a role to inform. They have a role to educate as well. So when it comes to this African continental free trade area, the media really has a very big role, like Ivy had said, to educate the public. I just want to add, before I move on to the policy aspect, to add that this conversation is still very much a very business oriented conversation, which has not cascaded down to the general public. The whole idea of a continental free trade area, what that means, it's still very much that distant, abstract conversation, and we need the media to break it down to the level of everybody to understand what it means. Like when you're talking about trade agreements, for instance, we should rely on the media to simplify such, complex issues, break it down to us what it means, in terms of trade agreements into digestible pieces, simple language, where they can be creative as well, use the creativity that they have to produce content which is understandable and accessible also to everyone, regardless of where they are. Also, bring to us or make us understand how this continental free trade agreement affects us as communities. How does it affect specific communities? How does it affect local businesses, industries? What exactly does it mean? And the media can be very creative. I see some media, I listen to this radio station in South Africa called 702. They are very good at breaking down conversations and simplifying them, and where they need experts on a particular issue, they can actually bring in experts to programs, and or not only just bring an expert, but also create a platform which is conversational, and have the public call in and ask questions, and make comments, or just make reflections on a particular issue. And I think with this particular area of the continental free trade area, we need that kind of a proactive approach, a robust approach, to ensure that there is awareness that is raised by the media, play that educational role by engaging in educational programming, and creating those dedicated segments on whether on TV or radio or online platforms, whichever platforms work. Also, that educational approach, I think, is very important to promote that understanding of the basic understanding of what it means to have the continental free trade area. Not at the moment, you realize that the conversation is more on the big media, business-oriented media. But how about our community-based media as well? I think the media also at community level, I just did a small article recently on community media. You can see that there community radio stations all over the continent, and these play an educational role, access to information, they facilitate engagement. So those also are supposed to be used. But however, I think also as organizations that work around this area, we need also to engage with the media. Let's not assume that, the media fully understands the issues around the continental free trade area. And I think there is need to have that in as much as we expect them as the fourth estate to educate the public, we also need to build the capacity of the media to ensure that they effectively exercise that role of educating and raising awareness. And quickly moving on to the policy aspects, the media also has an important role to play around that area by engaging in informative campaigns or programs, ensuring that there's an active public citizenry or the public that can advocate or understand or support policies. And also moving on very fast, the media as well, there are some issues around the continental free trade area that they can raise through publishing. Like I said, they have to be creative. They can also publish opinion pieces and editorials that look at specific trade policies and reforms, and also using influential voices in the media to also shape public opinion, or put also pressure on policy makers, and also engaging in public debates, public forums, but also having a platform which caters for diverse voices. The challenge that we have, especially on the continent, is that we still have like the state broadcaster, that state-funded media, which is usually, gravitates towards a certain political position, and they tend, in some instances, not to cover issues in a balanced manner. But we need the media to be independent, the media to cover the issues. Even the continental free trade area itself, we need them to cover it objectively, the good of it and the challenges of it. Them giving different voices, diverse voices, because we need those voices that can effectively interrogate the continental free area, but also using their media platforms to advocate for specific policy changes or policy reforms, but they can then facilitate generally that dialogue.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, I was taking notes, and I was just internalizing how the media can actually play a huge role in policy reform, just like you put it. And I think you're right, because if the media itself does not understand the African continental free trade area, the components it has, then it's very difficult for them to educate the masses. And well, thank you so much for that one. Allow me to just get to Dr. Eghosa. I have a question for you here. Interesting, we've talked about the policy aspect, but then we want to know what could be the balance, what could be the media balance, them being advocates for free trade and the need for them to remain objective. And which is, I think, very critical, especially when addressing to the challenges of the African continental free trade area. Trust me, some countries have not really accepted this agreement, but then how can there be a balance between the media and how they are informing the public about this agreement? Doc.
Thank you very much for the question. So just to stand on what my other colleagues have spoken already, I think the first thing is that the media has to understand what the AFCT is all about. That's the first thing. So if you don't understand what the AFCT is all about, how can they actually advocate for it? So the media themselves, the media practitioners need to see themselves as a relevant stakeholder. Like the way we have youths, where we have women, where we have other relevant stakeholders in the AFCTA sort of governance architecture. How does the media see themselves? Do they see themselves as an important stakeholder that is important for the progress and the success of the AFCTA? That's just to set this. So in that regard, the media has to be very factual in terms of what they are reporting, how they are reporting it. Do they understand what they're saying? Are they reporting the correct intendment of that specific article of the AFCTA agreement, for example? Do they understand? It's also the media has to be, in a way, have to be trustworthy. If a particular media organization is known for reporting, in quote, fake news, or reporting news that are not substantiated, how do we believe such a media organization when they discuss stuff around the AFCTA? So first thing, trustworthiness and being factual in what you're reporting is very, very essential. So I just revert to what Adeyinka Adeyemi, who's a senior program management officer of the UNECA state. He says that the media creates and shapes public opinion by translating complex technical issues like AFCTA into stories accessible to the public. This means that the media has an important responsibility to unpack Africa's free trade story and actively engage the public on the integration agenda, and the various organizations will support the media in that regard. So the media often face the most testing challenge in informing the public and bringing their views into a wider debate of Africa regional integration. Also, Adeyinka Adeyemi also says that journalists have to remain factual in their reporting and serve as agents of change, sharing trusted content on the AFCTA, end of quote. So my view is that how can they do that? The media should simplify the AFCTA. They should break it down. As my other colleague said, should explain it, to put it like, for example, what stops them from using picture representation? What stops them from using snapshot? What stops them from doing like a 3-page, 2-page summary? Then there's a lot of reports and publications and media reports about AFCTA. The question is, does it get to the people on the ground? Do the people on the ground understand it? If a media organization is writing a report on the AFCTA like an academic paper, for example, can the ordinary person understand it? So for you to break it down to be simple and precise, that also needs a bit of skill set. Do the media organizations, they have that? So the content that the media provide must be understood by everyone. This is where it's very, very important that the media sees themselves as an important stakeholder. So the media needs to unpack the AFCTA and make it simplified. And as much as possible, the media is one of these stakeholders that can show how we can translate the AFCTA into achievable target, into actions. For example, journalists should take the story of the AFCTA to Africa, to Africans, to everyone, and in a format that everybody understands and everybody benefits from it. So back to your question. So how do we get that media balance? The media has to be very, very trustworthy, has to be faithful to the reality and the sort of the authenticity of the African story. And the media needs to also put itself accountable in the context of saying, yes, they have a very, very important role in society, and they should ensure that they report the real story around the AFCTA. So the media has to buy into the AFCTA. So if they don't buy into the AFCTA as a possible successful integration experiment, so will their reporting be biased or not? So I'll just end my contribution there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Doc, for highlighting the balance that the media can actually play. I think you talked much about the remaining factual, them, giving the right information, credible information to its citizens, and not, lying to them short. Right. So for those that are joining us, again, thank you so much for joining. Welcome to the African Liberty Monthly webinar. Today, we are looking into a very important topic, that is the role of the media in Africa's free trade story. We want to explore how the media can actually drive Africa's free trade agenda, and also discover how how the media can influence public perception, the policy aspect of it, and also trade itself. So we have with us our very special guests. We have Miss Ivy. Then we also have Miss Dube and Dr. Ekhator. I would rather call him Eghosa before I mispronounce his name. But again, thank you so much for joining. If you have any questions, please drop them in the Q&A and we'll be able to answer. Let me just check if we have one. Okay, yeah. So we have one question. Oh, now we have two. This question comes from Sunday. He says, how do I penetrate the international market within Africa for my startup that focuses on promoting sustainability? He's from Nigeria, he says. Okay, so let's see. Can we have Ms. Ive maybe to answer this question? So he's trying to find out how can he penetrate the international market within Africa for his startup that focuses on promoting sustainability. Maybe you'd want to answer that question, Ms. Ive. Thank you. Ms. Ive, you there? Okay.
Oh, yes, I am. Sorry, I was told by professionals that when your internet is acting up, you have to switch off your video. Let me try. So I was trying to switch it off. I think now it's behaving. So the question is how to penetrate international markets within Africa for a startup that focuses on promoting sustainability. I think that is what we are trying to get about to see when you're talking about the free trade agreement, free trade area, is that penetrability, because that is what the agreement is trying to bring about, so that you can transact, that you can move around, we can move around people, we can move around goods, we can move around services. So I think you're a candidate, or you're one to benefit from the agreement. To penetrate the international market from Africa, I think the question is also, yeah, well, it is understandable. I think it's also a bit too general, because there are many questions to it. It's also a bit of a legal question. As a lawyer, I would ask, first of all, is your startup registered? In which jurisdiction is it registered? Where do you want to go? Because then you should have, for it to penetrate within Africa, you must have a starting point. So I think for this, maybe I would advise you only for Kenya, and maybe this on how to get into Kenya. But maybe we can take this, we can have a sidebar for this, Andrew. Is that okay for me to say that?
Yes.
Because this is actually needs a legal opinion.
Yeah, and also maybe he's trying to look at the barriers that he could have when penetrating into the international market.
Oh, for barriers within Africa as it stands right now are quite many. Even before we go to the actual economic barriers, things like trade tariffs and duties and taxations, just high costs rather that should accompany the penetration. There's also culture, then there is the economic side, or maybe if I've understood the question in terms of the barriers. So these are all the barriers that the trade agreement and the trade area seek to have not totally removed, because you can't totally remove all of them, but they are being progressively reduced for ease of business.
All right, thank you so
allow
much.
me to say that. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. Let me see again if we have more questions. I think we have more questions in the chat. All right, so let me see. From Katebo, they are saying, are there concerns about unequal benefits of the AFCFTA among different African countries or economic sectors? If so, what role can the media play in addressing these concerns? I think this is a very important question. Let's see if we have Ms. Dube to dive into this question. They are trying to find out again, are there any concerns about unequal benefits of the AFCFTA And what role can the media play in addressing these concerns? Ms. Dube.
Yes, thank you so much for the question. So yes, indeed, we are not a homogeneous landscape on the continent. The different countries on the continent are at different levels and of economic development, and we are indeed, they are going to be, or there are legitimate concerns concerning unequal distribution of the benefits that we can accrue from this continental free trade area. For instance, if we are looking at countries that are already advanced, they in a position to compete, they're in a position to be more competitive as far as this is concerned, as compared to the less developed countries, that are still struggling, facing a lot of economic, a lot of hurdles. And so at the end of the day, it means that there will be uneven benefits from the free trade. And, just by virtue of being a weaker economy, it means that you face trade imbalances, and where you are importing, for example, more instead of exporting more, and that just on its own it exacerbates the inequalities. And also different sectors also may function differently or benefit differently as well. Like, for example, if countries that are strong in the area of the agricultural sector may actually have more, benefit more from agricultural trade, whilst those with, like maybe manufacturing sectors, they can also benefit more from trade which is associated with their area of focus, but not in the different sectorial strength. So you will see that certain industries may actually be more vulnerable than others, and some may actually be thriving, they may be leading. And now with the introduction of new technologies and all that, there could be job losses, there could be job creations in other areas. And also in terms of the infrastructure, we see that there are countries that have better infrastructure, such as South Africa. You look at the infrastructural development in South Africa; it is quite advanced, and that advanced infrastructure facilitates trade as compared to countries that are struggling infrastructurally. So yes, indeed, there are going to be such challenges. But in terms of the role of the media, yes, the media is an important stakeholder, which stands to contribute quite immensely in this area by reporting on how different countries, depending on our different realities, different circumstances, we can benefit or be disadvantaged under the continental free trade area. And they can also highlight success stories, highlight case studies, highlight where the challenges are, and provide that that detailed analysis is also very important on what the continental free trade area means. If for example, for Lesotho vis-a-vis for Botswana, what does it mean for Eswatini vis-a-vis Ethiopia? Look at the advantages that Egypt has, for example, as compared to Mali. So I think we need to have the media facilitating those conversations, providing data, providing analysis, and also just having advocating for where it's possible to make adjustments that can benefit countries that are lagging behind. The media has a role to provide a platform to raise those issues so as to promote inclusive policies, because some of the challenges can actually be solved through adopting inclusive policies, and the media can play an important role in advocating for such inclusive policies, and also raising awareness on success stories, but raising awareness also on challenges. In the interest of time, let me stop here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ms. Dube. You are very right. You know, when you were speaking, I was thinking, what exactly has the international media done? You've talked about success stories, and I'm from Zambia, and Zambian people can only know how Rwanda right now is enjoying its trade agreement through the international media. Well, interesting. Okay, so I would love to give Amadine the chance to speak, because I think he has a long question in the Q&A, and I would love him just to ask his question right here. Amadine, are you able to speak? If you are, you can unmute your mic, and our honored guests are here to answer your question. Thank you.
All right. Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Or good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so my question was just about the methods media can use to pass across the message of the message actually, because sometimes some persons have creative ways to reach people, because these days you have citizen journalists, so to speak, who have far bigger reach than legacy media. So we find that older professionals or experts frown upon, using certain methods or means or simplifying a message so much that they feel is no longer journalism or is no longer media. So my question is, what's the limit to how media can be creative or innovative in passing this message, without, like, do you prioritize your audience or do you prioritize the norms and practices of the profession? For instance, if you find that the audience is engaging and really understanding what you are trying to pass along, do you continue with that method? If your, let me put, for lack of a better word, your senior colleagues feel as though you are no longer, I don't know how to do it, say, being traditional in the sense of the media. So what do you prioritize? Do you go back to status quo and do it how everyone else is doing? Or do you say, well, my audience seems to understand better and they get this message clearly when I come down to this level, so I don't know what's the priority there.
Perfect, thank you so much. So any of my panelists here would maybe want to take it. I was thinking who can take it, but then
can I just briefly jump in? I think I'll use my own perspective as an academic to say, in terms of, if we are trying to simplify something, the question I ask myself is, who are the beneficiaries of that message? What is your audience? Who is your audience? So I think there are different ways of passing the AFCTA story. If I'm a journalist, I'm going to write a report. A detailed report will be different from when I'm just trying to report, give a summary of, let's say, a meeting about the AFCTA in Addis Ababa. I think for me, as an academic, when we are writing for academic journals, we write in a very, very academic way. But when we are doing blog posts, or we are doing like public opinion pieces, we write for different audiences. I think journalists should write for different audiences. Oh, yes, sometimes journalists write for specialist audience when they do the reports. Sometimes journalists work in radio stations. They use broken pidgin English. They use indigenous languages to pass their message across. I think yes, the older journalists might have some issues around maybe technology, but things are changing. Even the older journalists now, many of them are on Twitter, many of them are on Instagram, many of them share stuff on Facebook, many of them post their newspaper columns on Facebook. Why don't they just strictly and fully restrict their newspaper columns to their newspaper sort of back pages? So why did they allow online journalism? Everybody should have just been stuck with traditional newspaper formats of journalism. I think in a way we can be flexible depending on the audience, and let's look at the FCTA story as a story for different audience, for different people. But the key message is, are we passing the message across that the AFCTA is a potential game changer? The AFCTA is going to improve the economic prosperity of Africa. Are we passing the message across that the AFCTA has got something to do with the progress of Africa? And are journalists aware of that? And can journalists put that in concise form? But another way to look at it is that there should be some in-house training for journalists as well. There should be some training organized by government, by AFCTA for different types of journalists, activist journalists, citizen journalists, and traditional journalists. That's just from my own perspective as an outsider looking into it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doc, for explaining. Now, I see time is really moving, but then there's one crucial question I think that I have for you, our panelists. And I would love to have Ms. Dube answer this one. And maybe you can give us your experience at the Center for Human Rights at the University of Pretoria. Now, this question is very crucial. We want to understand what are the challenges that journalists or the media face in covering free trade issues. We've heard of journalists being arrested. We've heard of journalists, being kidnapped because they were covering a certain story in which probably the government felt that they are against them and all those kind of things. But then what other more challenges are the media facing with this regard? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I thought you were now answering the question, making my life easy.
I speak too much, sorry.
Yes, indeed. I'm just going to speak generally to the operating environment that the media is functioning. As we have alluded to the fact that the media is a significant stakeholder in reporting on the Continental Free Trade Agreement. We are expecting them to do a whole lot of things to educate, to publicize, to raise awareness, to simplify, the complex trade issues into the language that we understand and make the message as accessible and as relevant as possible. But this particular media that we are making reference to operate under certain conditions, and on the continent we are at different levels and different media landscapes. And the media in the different African countries, they face different challenges and advantages as well that are crucial to mention or important to mention when we're looking at the African Continental Free Trade Area. One of the issues that I want to highlight is the challenge is that of sustainability. As we've seen with the COVID-19 pandemic, one of the casualties of that pandemic was the media itself. Yeah, the media struggled very much to survive within the context of the pandemic. Some of the media houses did not recover from the pandemic. Some are struggling to recover from the pandemic. So there is that challenge of media sustainability, which in this case was as a result of a public emergency. But we also have challenges around media sustainability because of the economic circumstances prevailing in a particular country that makes it very difficult for the media to function or to operate and do all these creative things that we think the media, or we are saying the media should actually do. All these things that we are mentioning, they require resources. And some of the media houses actually do not have the requisite resources to perform this function effectively. In order for them to effectively report on the Continental Free Trade Area, they need to have the know-how. How is the media going to be educated around this issue for them to effectively report on these? They need to conduct their own research, in-depth research. And the media also has to conduct investigative journalism. And we know very well that, investigative journalism is not child's play. It needs a lot of resources. It can take time and all that. And you find that some media houses only big media houses can actually sustain the investigative journalism or the kind of creativity that we are expecting them to also engage. But also, besides the issue of resources, there's also the technical capacity as well to effectively report. Like I mentioned before, that we need the media to understand the issues before they can report on them. So that technical capacity, the gaps also exist within the media sector around the issues so to enable them to have an interest around the area or to, constantly cover the issues. You need an engaged media, you need an informed media to be able to inform. And for them to do that, they have to be informed themselves. The other issue is the political environment. Free media, free press is still very much of a dream in most countries. We see in many instances, if you read the reports on media freedom, the Freedom House report, the ICJ report, you would find that there is a lot that is happening that is undermining the freedom of the media, the freedom of the press. We have censorship, we have journalists that are arrested on the line of duty. We also have, like with the technologies that we have today, there is targeted surveillance that is being undertaken and targeting journalists. South Africa has a very progressive decision by the Constitutional Court and the High Court on surveillance of journalists. And this is a reality in other cases, although maybe there has not been any successful litigation, but this is a reality that there is surveillance that is being undertaken on these issues. And we were recently in Mozambique on a training, and some of the issues that we were discussing there were issues around transparency, around freedom of expression, around media development. And we had testimonies of journalists that are actually finding it very difficult to operate, very difficult to report on certain issues. Some have gone on to the extent of being physically harassed, being kidnapped, having not existing freely in their own country. So there is that political reality, or those political circumstances that hinder the public, or not the public, but the journalists or the media from reporting on particular issues. And most of the times when trainings are undertaken, the challenge, the problem that we usually do, especially as civil society organizations or think tanks, is that we invite journalists and we don't invite the editors, or those that have the power to actually drive the agenda in the newsroom. If you just invite a junior journalist and you don't have the buy-in of the editor, you have not done anything. You need the buy-in of those that can control, or those that have the power. So we need to get them along as well. So yes, I know there are a lot of issues also concerning in the infrastructure, the technology gaps as well. The actually having the interest in the particular area, or awareness around particular issues also is another a challenge.
All right, thank you. Before we conclude this webinar, Ms. Afe, Ms. Dube is just from talking about the innovation aspect of it as well. She tackled that, but then I want to find out from you, we want to know how can the media promote innovation? Or should I say, how does digital innovation promote trade and investment in Africa? Because now the world is going digital and everything has to change. But then how can this digital innovation promote trade and investment in Africa? Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. So the main way, as Dr. Eghosa mentioned, that the media's role, the two primary ones are education and sharing information. So informing people and educating them. The other one was entertainment, but our focus is on these two. So when it comes to entrepreneurship, I would say first one, that is informing people, and exposure. I think exposure, I would say looking at business people that are already doing well, that are already in cross-border practice, and giving them good coverage. This would then have the effect of attracting investors and clients as well. Then this would also inspire others who then know that, you know, this is working. This is how, like the question that was posed today in the Q&A about how to, you know, get into these markets. It's the media that shows people how to do this. There is a show, I remember that it's on YouTube, called Daring Abroad by a journalist known as Alex Chamwada. Daring Abroad shows, you know, Africans who've gone to other countries, although this is not just within Africa, but how people have gone there as entrepreneurs and how they managed to navigate all the challenges that they faced as newcomers, how they were able to also get to know about the legal environment and the trading environment as well, and eventually then succeed in the business. Education as well about on innovation and entrepreneurship. There are people who maybe I would have been an entrepreneur if I would have been, you know, taught and shown the ropes. I might have it in me, but no one has taught me. Then it could also highlight issues as well, that because the media is, you know, it's a mirror of society. So the media can highlight the issues that are there that need to be addressed in order to make markets more conducive for everyone. We want inclusivity. We want, and the role of this, the Continental Free Trade Agreement is because we want equitable development for everyone. So this needs to have inclusivity. So the media can then look and see, you know, is in this landscape, are women, are people living with disabilities involved? What can governments do, especially in terms of policy, to bring this marginalized groups on board as well, so that development is not just for a few in society, but for everyone. Right now, it's still a challenge, for example, in many parts of Africa for women to access loans for businesses. So I would say that so far there still remains much to be done, because some of the gaps that exist in terms of this, when you talk about entrepreneurship and innovation, I think Hlengiwe mentioned it a bit about localizing this agreement, bringing it to the people, and even using the language that people understand, and breaking down the technical aspects. I can see you've unmuted, but that is just the gist of it.
Yeah, thank you so much. Interesting there. You know, this webinar has been one of the greatest webinars that I've ever moderated. And I just want to say thank you so much to our wonderful guests here, Doc, Ms. Dube, Ivy, for your great insights. But again, time has really gone, and it just shows how much interesting this webinar was. I can't let you go without you giving your last 3 seconds remarks. We can start with Dr. Eghosa, then Ms. Dube and Ivy. Thank you. 3 seconds.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. So my final words are, the role of media is central in spreading or disseminating information by the AFCTA and empowering the private sector to the full advantage of the opportunities arising from the AFCTA. Without the support of the media, the AFCTA might not succeed. Thank you.
Indeed, thank you. Yeah.
Yes, as I close, I just want to say that it's very good that you organize this roundtable discussion, but one of them should actually be one that has the media, and you are breaking down the Continental Free Trade Agreement to the media, the different components, so as to equip them with the knowledge of what exactly to report and what it means. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would say that the main, a critical aspect of the role of the media when it comes to this is making sure that the information about the market information in Africa gets to the remotest villages in Africa. So, and that also means just having a deep analysis of the issues. And so Hlengiwe's suggestion just sums it all. Let's first start by capacitating media practitioners so that then we are sure that what goes out then to those villages is accurate.
Indeed, thank you so much for those recommendations, and we've actually taken note of them. And to our attendees, thank you for joining in. Your interactions in the Q&A, in the chat box are just amazing. See you next month. Again, we are hosting another incredible monthly call. So we'll get to invite you as well. Thank you and have a good, enjoy September. Just starting tomorrow. Bye, everyone.
Bye.